You guys always seem to love my videos where I go back to a certain position in a certain year and talk about what happened to each and every running back from that draft class. Today we're going to go back all the way to 2011 and talk about the running backs who were selected into the NFL. We're going to go through all the main guys, talk about who they were, and how they ended up doing in the league. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the 2011 running back class. So first I want to talk about some notable running backs that I'm not going to talk about. There's guys like Jaquez Rogers, Dion Lewis, Matt Asiata, Jordan Todman, Sean Drawn, and a bunch of fullbacks. None of those guys deserve to be in the video, and we're going to flash forward all the way to the 5th round with the 133rd overall pick and talk about Johnny White. White ended up going to North Carolina and was drafted by the Bills in the 5th round. He split time at both corner and running back due to his insane athleticism and got most of his touches on kickoff returns until his senior year, where he became a full-time running back and ran for 720 yards and 7 touchdowns, but he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. As a rookie in 2011, he played in 12 games but only logged 38 yards on 12 carries. He would then start in 2012 with Buffalo, playing in 3 games, logging 8 carries for 34 yards before he was released by the Bills and signed with the Packers off waivers. He would not record any stats with the Packers though, mostly because he got hurt, and ended up with the Montreal Alouettes of the CFL for 2013, and then he would end up out of football by 2014. With the 130th overall pick in the 4th round, Jamie Harper was drafted out of Clemson. He would end up having a pedestrian career with the Tigers, finishing with 760 yards and 7 touchdowns as a junior. He would declare for the draft early anyways because of his mixture of size and speed, and I guess NFL teams really liked that. He was then drafted by the Titans with the 130th overall pick in the 4th round, but struggled to find much playing time. He played in 13 games in 2011, mostly on special teams, logging 11 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. In 2012, his touchdowns went up to 3, but he only had 40 yards on 19 carries, and it was clear that Tennessee's plan was to use him as a power back, and that was not working, and by 2013, he was out of the league. The next guy we need to talk about is Bilal Powell. The Jets ended up taking Powell out of Louisville with the 126th overall pick in the 4th round. He was the starter for the Cardinals his senior year, running for 1,400 yards with 11 touchdowns, and was named both an All-Big East and an All-American player. After being a backup for the Jets in 2011 and 12, he put up 697 yards in 2013. He went back to being a rotational back for the Jets in 2014 and 15, but had 2 back-to-back 700-plus yard seasons in both 2016 and 17. He remained as a spellback for the rest of his career, retiring in 2021 after not playing at all for a couple of seasons. He finished with 3,675 yards and 15 touchdowns in 9 years in the league. He wasn't all that bad. Up next, the Oakland Raiders took Tywan Jones out of Eastern Washington with the 125th overall pick in the 4th round. Originally a corner, he was moved to running back and was primarily a return specialist, where he got most of his playing time for the Raiders. In 2017 though, he was released and signed with the Bills, and then after that he broke his arm, which sidelined him for the remainder of 2017, and then he would hurt his neck in 2018. After that, he had a short stint with the Texans and was re-signed by the Bills in 2020, where he spent a couple of years. In 2023, he signed with the Giants, and while he has been a running back, he has more receiving yards than rushing, and has also been a good kick returner. The next guy we need to talk about is Syracuse running back DeLon Carter. He ended up being drafted by the Colts with the 119th overall pick in the 4th round. He ran for over 1,000 yards in 2009, 1,200 yards in 2010, and because of that, he was considered a good running back prospect. During his rookie season in Indianapolis, he ran for 377 yards and 2 scores, but would remain as a backup in 2012 and was traded to the Ravens for the 2013 season. He was then cut before the season started and spent a year as a backup in Jacksonville before being out of football in 2014. He had a crazy rise and fall. The next guy we need to talk about is Kendall Hunter. He had a good career at Oklahoma State. He was a consensus All-American in 2010 after running for 1,500 yards and 16 touchdowns, which was nearly identical to his sophomore season. He finished his time as a Cowboy with over 4,200 yards and 37 touchdowns, and the 49ers would take him with the 115th overall pick in the 4th round, where he sat behind Frank Gore in 2011. He would then tear his Achilles in 2012 and then again in 2014, and the Niners would cut him once he was eligible, and then he would sign with the Saints in 2015, but got hurt for a 3rd time. His next stop was in the CFL, but then he announced he would be retiring after the 2017 season. It's kind of a sad story for him. The next thing we need to talk about is a fun name, as we had to talk about Roy Halou Jr. He was drafted by the Washington Redskins with the 105th pick in the 4th round, and he came out of Nebraska. He had 2 straight 1,000-plus yard seasons with the Huskers in both 2009 and 2010, and proceeded to have a mini Linsanity type run with the Redskins his rookie year. He had 640 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then 380 yards and a touchdown through the air. But sadly, injuries would hamper the rest of his career, and he would end up on IR in 2012 and was the backup in 13 and 14. He then would sign with the Raiders in 2015, but got injured again and couldn't make the team for 2016. He finished his time as an NFL player with over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. Hawaii is not really known for making running backs, which is why Alex Green was so unique. The Packers took him with the 96th overall pick in the 3rd round, after which he had a great season with the Rainbow Warriors. He ran for 1,200 yards and 18 touchdowns in the run-and-shoot system, having one game where he put up almost 330 rushing yards on 19 carries. From there, he was a backup in Green Bay and tore his ACL in Week 7, missing the rest of the season, and this would slow him down for the remainder of his career. In 2012, he had 135 rushing attempts for 464 yards, and he would not make the 2013 regular season roster. He'd end up with the Jets in 2013, but only had 11 carries and was out of the league after that season. In 2017, he would sign with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL, where he was pretty good, but he was hurt a lot. He was then off the team by 2019 and out of football entirely. Stephen Ridley was one of 2 running backs that the Patriots would draft that year, and he was taken with the 73rd overall pick in the 3rd round out of LSU. As a junior in 2010, Ridley ran for 1,147 yards and 15 touchdowns and was the 2nd team All-SEC selection. He started his career in New England as a backup in 2011, but got the lion's share of carries for the Pats in 2012, finishing with a career-high 1,263 yards and 12 scores. After that, though, he got injured a few times and lost some carries, and would eventually sign with the Jets for 2015. He struggled to stay in the league after that, bouncing around between the Lions, Colts, and Falcons, and then the Broncos, Vikings, and Steelers in 2017. He then would retire as a Steeler in 2018 and finish with over 3,000 yards and 24 touchdowns to his name. After that, the Dallas Cowboys took Oklahoma running back Demarco Murray with the 71st overall pick in the 3rd round. DeMarco took the world by storm his freshman year, scoring 5 rushing touchdowns in his first game for the Sooners. He then had 2 back-to-back 1,000-plus yard seasons with them and finished with 50 total touchdowns and a handful of all Big 12 awards and OU records. He entered Dallas behind Tashard Choice and Felix Jones, but after Felix Jones got hurt, he exploded against the Rams for 253 yards on 25 carries. After that, he was named the starter for Dallas, where he stayed until 2015. He won the league rushing title in 2014 with 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns, and outpriced the Cowboys. This was widely considered a bad move for Philly, though, since he only ended up with 700 yards and 6 touchdowns and would only start 8 games. Most of this was because the Eagles' offensive line was not what he was used to in Dallas, and he got passed up on the depth chart before they then traded him to Tennessee for the 2016 season. Despite putting up almost 1,300 yards with the Titans in 2016, his output would shrink once again in 2017 to just 650 yards, and with the emergence of Derrick Henry, he was toast. He was then cut in 2018 and announced his retirement soon after. He's now a running backs coach and is currently with the Oklahoma Sooners, reuniting with his old team. Pretty cool. Next up is Daniel Thomas out of Kansas State. As a JUCO transfer for K-State from Northwest Mississippi Community College, Daniel put up 2 straight seasons above 1,200 rushing yards, with 1,265 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns for the Cats in 2009, and 1,600 yards and 19 touchdowns in 2010. By the time he left K-State, Thomas was 2nd in career rushing yards and 4th in rushing touchdowns after just 2 years. But he would struggle to succeed in the NFL. The Dolphins would take him with the 62nd overall pick in the 2nd round, and after a couple of 100-yard rushing games, he got hurt and finished the 2011 campaign with just 581 yards. He then got stuck as a rotational back after that, and the Dolphins cut him in 2014. He then bounced around between the Bears and the Dolphins, and then he was out of the NFL entirely after 2016, and after that, he would sign a short contract in the CFL in 2017. After that, he was out of football completely, and he would end his career with 1,480 yards and 10 touchdowns. Another guy taken in the 2nd round was Michael LaShore, as the Lions took him with the 57th overall pick. He would end up spending 3 years at Illinois as a running back, but wasn't their starter until 2010, where he put up almost 1,700 yards and 17 touchdowns on the ground. Because of this, he became a first-team All-Big Ten and a second-team All-American, and the Lions wanted him to be their franchise back, but he tore his ACL in training camp and missed the entire 2011 campaign. He was then suspended for the first few games of 2012, but came back and put up a 100-yard game in his first time back. He finished 2012 with nearly 800 yards and 9 touchdowns, but after that he would struggle, and by the start of the 2014 campaign, he was out of the NFL and into the CFL with the BC Lions. He didn't do much up in Canada either, and was out of football entirely by 2015. With the 56th overall pick in the 2nd round, the New England Patriots took Vereen out of Cal. Vereen was a good player in the Pac-10 with 2 seasons around 1,000 yards, and he was a second-team all-conference pick while he was with the Golden Bears. He ended up starting his career in New England as a backup behind Jarvis Green Ellis, playing in 5 games and only scoring 1 touchdown. He would then settle into a role of a supplemental back for the Patriots, not playing at all and not playing that often, and eventually was rotated with guys like Danny Woodhead and Stephen Ridley, and was seen as a good receiving back. In 2015, he left for the Giants, where he had a similar role, and then was signed to the Saints preseason roster in 2018, but did not make the squad. He'd retire from the league after 7 years, with a total of 1,500 yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. He also had 1,800 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns, and got a Super Bowl ring, so he had a pretty successful career in my eyes. Ryan Williams was the second running back drafted out of Virginia Tech, and he was one of the best running backs in Hokie history, breaking the record for rushing yards in a season and ACC touchdowns in a season his freshman year. He finished his Hokie career as a redshirt sophomore with 2,132 yards and 32 scores, and was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals with a 38th overall pick. However, he was injury prone in college, and on his first NFL carry in 2011, he ruptured his patella tendon, which put him out for the rest of the year. He only played a couple of games in 2012 before he got hurt again, and by that point, he was passed up on the depth chart. The Cardinals released him in 2014, and he signed with the Cowboys, but he ended up only making their practice squad. He was then out of the league by 2016, and it's really sad because he was one of the better looking running backs in college football, but the amount of injuries he took really hurt his career and kept him from being a solid pro football player. Okay, so our last guy on the list is Mark Ingram. He was taken with the 28th overall pick in the first round, and he was obviously drafted out of Alabama. He had an insane college career with the Crimson Tide, which included over 3,300 rushing yards and 42 touchdowns in just 3 years. He also won the 2009 Heisman Trophy and declared for the 2011 NFL Draft. He was drafted by the Saints with the 28th overall selection in the first round, and instantly would enter one of the best offenses in the league, but injuries hampered his rookie season, and he finished with just 474 yards and 5 touchdowns in just 10 games. His slow start would continue throughout the next few years in New Orleans, and he didn't break the 1,000-yard mark until year 6 in 2016, where he ran for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. 2017 was his best year, running for 1,100 yards and 12 scores. After 2018, though, he signed with the Baltimore Ravens, where he spent 2 years and once again put up over 1,000 yards, and then he would spend a little bit of time in Houston before being traded back to New Orleans in 2021, where he would then retire in 2022. While his career was hampered by injuries and he may have taken an unorthodox path, he actually wasn't a bust in my eyes, and he stuck around in the NFL for quite some time. So yeah, today we went back through the 2011 running back NFL draft class, and most of these guys honestly ended up being bust. Demarco Murray and Mark Ingram were solid, Stephen Ridley had a couple of good games, and Roy Halou seemingly had 1 good month, but besides that, there were a lot of guys who flamed out of the league within a couple of years, and that is seemingly the case at the running back position. It's very expendable, and it seems like you really have to make your money and make your time quick, or else you're going to be out of the league. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video though, and if you did, be sure to let me know your thoughts on each one of these players and who you think was the biggest bust, and also let me know another position group and year I should cover in my next one. Also, before you go, don't forget to also leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.